Tatsias.
Mr. Norwood.
Mr. Tully.
Mr. Schlickman.
Mr. Bahu.
Mr. Norwood.
Mr. Olson.
Paul Schlickman.
Mr. Booton.
Mr. Paul Schlickman.
Mr. Getchia.
Mr. David Markowitz.
Mr. O'Hare.
Paul Schlickman.
Mr. Moran.
Mr. David Marcus.
Mr. Tatsias.
Mr. Norwood.
Mr. Tully.
Mr. Schlickman.
Mr. Bahu.
Mr. Norwood.
Mr. Olson.
Mr. Paul Schlickman.
Mr. Booton.
Mr. Paul Schlickman.
Mr. Getchia.
Mr. David Markowitz.
Mr. O'Hare.
Paul Schlickman.
Mr. Moran.
Mr. David Marcus.
Mr. Tatsias.
I think we need to clear the air. And I would start by the claim that Mr. Gitcher, I'll call you out on this, saying that you saw him at a Thanksgiving Day game, said hi to him, and that was the end of your discussions with him until this process began. But then you went out later to have a conversation with a blogger that you actually spoke to him about a grant and how they received the grant or something to do with a grant. And then I spoke with Charlie Lyons a couple of days ago, and Mr. Lyons, the superintendent over at Shawshene Valley, said you also spoke to Mr. Norkowitz about getting information from him about their budget that's not published regarding legal fees. On top of that, you present that Mr. Lavoie went from technical director up to superintendent, and he didn't. He became an assistant superintendent first, then he moved up. Just because you say it doesn't make it true, and I'd like an explanation, please.
I don't know when Mr. Booton this will become about me. It's about two qualified candidates that sit in front of you. You're making this about me. Were you part of that conversation I had with anybody? I think then you're fabricating some of the truth across the table. And just because you read a blog doesn't mean it's true. I like the way you put the spin to it, but stick to the two candidates or three candidates that are before us. Their qualifications, not mine. That's the fact, Ray. You can pit your political process against me and call this politics. This is about students, not politics. Stick to what you have in front of you. I believe both candidates are qualified, and I am voting for who I feel is the most qualified. I feel David Norkowitz is the most qualified, and I will vote for him.
You're telling this board you did not speak to Mr. Norkowitz about the grant funding and about the budget information, specifically the legal expenses. You said that here in front of all of us, so it is personal to me.
Ray, again,
So I have a still have the floor, and I would like, I'm going to make a motion to have Mr. Norkowitz come in and Mr. Schlickman come back in, and we can ask him those questions.
you can ask whatever you like, Ray.
Thank you.
You're trying to discount someone's qualifications based on a conversation.
No.
Is that the best you can do for these students, is sit here and try to make this personal? You tried the other night with Mr. Tatsias. You tried with Mr. Moran, and now you're trying with me. This is about being an elected official and sitting here and doing it. I spoke to Mr. Norkowitz about a grant. Yes, I did, as I told you. And as I said before,
Excuse me, you did not tell us that.
I don't
You
think
told
you
us
asked
you
me.
spoke at the, you
I
sat
said I
right
met
there.
him. I met him. Look at
And that's
review.
it.
Review.
We can pull up the
Review.
tape.
I said when I met him. I just want to point out personal privilege. This goes much deeper than this vote, this personal attack from Committeeman Booton. It goes back to Cliff Krieger, and I supported Cliff Krieger because I thought he was a better candidate. And I liked Rick. I still like Rick. It goes further than that. Every conversation we have in the midst of a football game or whatever, it is what it is. If you're going to hold it against a candidate because I asked a question about legal fees and how much a place spends, okay. Use it against them, hold it against the kids, do whatever. It goes much deeper. We all get where it is. I mean, it's no secret. But to hold the school to that point and say that there's a lie or this or that, there's nothing hidden here. There's no agenda here. It's what's best for the students. You take your vote, I take my vote. We look at the education, we look at the experience, and we just do what's best for the kids. As you do at PYO and as I do at Gallery, and we just vote. I don't understand the animosity that's being thrown out there, feeding blogs saying this and that, doing this or that, and telling other people whatever needs to be told.
Did you say no?
I did not say that.
The low-income student question come up. I'm sure that Mr. Schlickman has much more experience in it than Mr. Norquist. I'm not too sure Sheen has the issue. It comes down to, they're just asking us to take a huge leap of faith for someone that really hasn't proven himself. And if I read the newspapers, sometimes I do, and sometimes I get a chuckle, but reading it looks like rather than electing a superintendent, we're electing a package here. So it's just, let's go with the person that at least I think is the most qualified by far, and move on, and because it's about the school, it's not about the candidate.
Having an open time frame is beneficial. We were elected to come up with a superintendent. I think if we wait 6 months, some of us may not be here. The way our charter is written, we're here to find a superintendent. So I think if you're going to have an interim superintendent, I think there should be a time frame on how long the superintendent is in here, so it motivates the members in here to get a superintendent sooner rather than later, so there'll be no political going on. So I would like you to amend the motion to have the interim for only 3 months, or until such time that we can come up with a superintendent.
Without even amending it, I would hope that we would have a superintendent by September of the year. I was thinking of a short-term interim, and if that's the wording, that's fine. But if for some reason we did not have a new superintendent, rather than making another motion, I just said until we can get a superintendent. The intent is that we try as hard as we can to get a superintendent. We need a superintendent. We need more than a superintendent at this particular school because of retirements. Want to do that, and you know what that is? We're not gaining anything. We're not getting any place. And you and I, we may disagree and argue. I'm not looking directly at you, Freddie, but the point is, we get a responsibility to all those 2,100 kids that go into the school, and I think we better get moving, or we're going to be lost come admission time at the beginning of the school year.
I agree with Mr. O'Hare, but limit the interim superintendent until 3 months. If we need to vote again to extend it a month, then we can at that time. But I don't want to end up in a 4-4 tie that it's open, that we have the interim for 6 months or 8 months until it's convenient to then pick a superintendent with maybe some of these board members not here. Thank you.
Which of us aren't going to be here? I'm kind of curious.
3 of us are up for re-election.
That takes us into something.
Assuming it's.
And we are the full Lowell, so there will be a lot of politicking going on in the streets of Lowell, I'm sure.
I'll second the discussion.
Gentlemen, if I may, this is exactly what we're trying to avoid. Just what this conversation is turning into. What if it's another 3 months? If we can't make a decision in 3 months, that's, I would think we fail that responsibility. And that's all I'm trying to expedite the process. I'm trying to come up with a solution. The process that we're using right now, of voting, is not working. I'm not going to ask any one of us here tonight, but I don't think anybody's willing to make a concession. All right, so obviously, you're not going to make a concession, and probably the majority of us. So something has to be done, and we have to have someone in place to just do the day-to-day operation, get this school ready for the school year coming.
Well, I could support this motion. I'm just curious if we reopen another search, or if we just try to stay with the same applicants that we currently have. It seems like we are deadlocked, and we'll be deadlocked for a long time to come. So, unfortunately for both of these very qualified, all 3 of these very qualified applicants, it almost seems like we may have to reconsider another search option. And I don't want to amend the motion any more than it's already been amended. But I think that discussion needs to take place before we go ahead and take a vote on whether we're going to have an interim superintendent or not.